top horrific punishment once used by secret societies in history. Your left hand is resting on a wooden board. Beside it sits a short knife, a folded white cloth, and a small cup. Nobody in the room is yelling. Nobody needs to. You already know what happens next. You have embarrassed your boss, lost money, broken an order, or created a problem that cannot be solved with a polite apology. So you wrap the cloth around your little finger, place the blade against the joint, and prepare to offer part of yourself as proof that you are sorry. This was called Yubitsume, or finger shortening, a punishment and act of atonement associated with Japan's Yakuza. Apparently, my mistake sounded more sincere when accompanied by a missing body part. Secret societies have always sold the same basic promise: protection, brotherhood, power, and access to people who know things you do not. But the door usually swings only one way. Joining may require an oath, leaving may require a miracle, and breaking the rules can turn your closest brothers into the people deciding how much of you should remain attached. Yubitsume was not simply a boss grabbing a member and hacking at his hand. Traditionally, the offender could be expected to perform the act himself, wrap the severed piece, and present it to a superior. That detail matters. The organization did not merely punish your body, it made you participate. A common explanation says losing part of the little finger weakened a man's grip on a sword, making him more dependent on the protection of his group. Whether every part of that origin story is certain or not, the message was obvious. Your hand now carried your record. Repeat the offense, and another section might follow. Long before digital files, the Yakuza had invented a performance review you could see from across the room. Chinese secret brotherhoods developed a different method. Make the rules sound as if the universe itself was waiting to kill you. The Heaven and Earth Society. The Hongmen and later groups described as triads used elaborate initiation ceremonies, sacred symbols, blood oaths, and long lists of promises. Members swore not to betray brothers, steal their money, interfere with their families, cheat them, or reveal secrets. The penalties in surviving versions of the oaths are wonderfully calm. Break the rule, and you may be killed by swords, thunderbolts, blades, or other extremely final forms of customer feedback. One 19th century account even recorded a punishment of hundreds of strokes for revealing the Brotherhood's oaths. Other records from overseas Chinese societies describe formal meetings where instruments of punishment were displayed and members could be sentenced to lashes. Now, not every supernatural threat in an oath became a literal execution. Thunderbolts were not kept in a cabinet behind the incense master, but the ritual made violence feel sacred. The group was not merely angry with you, Heaven was angry with you. Conveniently, Heaven often communicated through several men holding sticks. Then there were the Vehmic courts of medieval Westphalia, sometimes called the secret or silent courts. Imagine receiving a summons from men whose signs, passwords, and membership you do not know. The judges meet under a tree or at a known court site, but parts of the process may be closed to outsiders. If you appear, you face sworn men who belong to a network stretching far beyond your town. If you refuse, you may be condemned without being present. The punishment associated with the secret court was death, usually by hanging. A nearby tree could become the gallows. The body might be left there as a message, sometimes with a marked knife to show that this was not considered ordinary murder. It was justice because the man with the rope had agreed to call it justice. Later stories turned the Vehmic into an almost supernatural army of masked executioners using torture chambers and hunting victims through forests. The real history was still frightening, but less theatrical. Modern research has rejected many of the wildest legends. The courts did not constantly torture people, and their meeting places were not always hidden. Reality simply involved secret procedure, death sentences, and a rope. Apparently, that was considered the restrained version. In the United States after the Civil War, the Ku Klux Klan used secrecy for a different purpose. Its masks, invented titles, night rides, and whispered threats were designed to make organized terror look like an invisible force. The Klan targeted newly freed Black Americans, political organizers, teachers, white supporters of Reconstruction, and anyone else challenging white control. Victims could be dragged from their homes, beaten, whipped, driven away, or murdered. Schools and churches were burned. Families learned that voting, owning property, teaching, or simply refusing to behave as local white men demanded could bring riders to the door after dark. The Klan called this the defense of order. The order they meant was a racial system in which one group gave commands and another group survived by obeying. The costume helped. A violent neighbor was dangerous. A violent neighbor pretending to be a ghostly soldier in a secret empire was dangerous and deeply embarrassing for the human species. This was punishment without a lawful trial. The accusation, verdict, and sentence arrived together, often wearing masks. Local officials sometimes ignored the violence or supported it, which made the society's secrecy even more effective. The hood did not only hide the attacker, it hid the number of respectable citizens standing behind him. Criminal brotherhoods such as the Sicilian Mafia and the Russian Vehmic relied on a simpler rule: silence keeps you alive. The Mafia's code of Omertà discouraged cooperation with authorities. A member who informed did more than break a rule. He threatened the survival of everyone above him. That could turn punishment into execution. Russian thieves-in-law developed their own criminal code, and historical research describes death penalties for grave violations, such as informing on fellow members or repeatedly cheating them. This created a beautiful little prison. The group could protect you from outsiders, but the protection lasted only while you remained useful, obedient, and quiet. Go to the police, and you became a traitor. Refuse the police, and you might go to prison for the group. Either way, congratulations. The Brotherhood had found a way for your loyalty to hurt you. And this is where we need to correct one of the most repeated stories about secret societies. Freemason rituals became famous for bloody-sounding oath penalties involving cutthroats, torn bodies, and other dramatic fates. Anti-Masonic writers often treated those words as proof that lodges were quietly murdering members. But the evidence for actual enforcement is weak. The penalties were symbolic language inside ritual, and Masonic ceremonies had already been exposed in print by the 18th century. That does not make the words gentle. It means a frightening oath is not the same thing as a documented punishment. Secret societies attract rumors because secrecy leaves an empty room, and human imagination immediately fills it with knives, candles, and somebody wearing an unnecessarily complicated robe. The worst punishments used by secret societies were not always the most creative. A missing finger, a beating, a hanging, a midnight whipping, or a bullet could be horrifying enough. What made them especially powerful was the silence around them. The victim often did not know who had accused him, who had voted, who would carry out the sentence, or whether his own friends were watching. The society controlled the rule, the evidence, the punishment, and the story told afterward. That was the real secret. Not hidden treasure, not ancient magic, just a group of people deciding that loyalty mattered more than law, then calling fear a form of brotherhood.